Welcome to another episode of CrossFit Your English, the first English professional podcast made for students and by students. Today, we've got another special guest. His name is Sebastian Bernal, and he is from Argentina. Welcome, Sebastian, to the podcast.
Hey, Jorge. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Well, tell us about you and what's your profession?
Well, I work as a product owner or product manager. The title differs based on the company I'm working, and depending on who you ask, you can have different meanings on what the job is supposed to do. It's basically like a cook in a way. Like if you go to different restaurants, they will ask you to prepare different recipes. It should be like you should know about ingredients, about cutting stuff, like about boiling things, but then you do it in a different way and you work with different people who have different emotions and so on. So it's a managerial kind of position, and you get to deal a lot of people and egos. It's very interesting, but you don't have a professional career about it. That's what's very tricky about this. You don't go to school to study it. Someone one day decides if they want to trust you with it, and you start doing it, and then you start learning more and more.
Yeah, learning by doing, right?
Yes, indeed.
Great. So yeah, I've seen, of course, your profile on LinkedIn, which is also one of the whole points of the podcast, right? To showcase people on LinkedIn, and your description says CSPO and CSM, which I think it stands for Certified Scrum Product Owner and Certified Scrum Master. Am I right?
Yes, you are.
Great.
I've taken both certifications, and I think it's Scrum Alliance. You have two main web pages you can go to. So this is all within the agile environment, let's say, and you have these two big websites, let's say, that they say we can certify that you have this knowledge, and there are degrees. Those certifications that you're seeing are at the base level, which every single PO or Scrum Master or people who wants to work within the agile environment should know. And in some interviews, they actually require it, like Google, for example, they will not look at your profile if you ain't got, for example, the CSPO or the CSM, depending on the role that you want to apply for. Some other companies do not care so much. I find them very useful, and there are people in Argentina who help you get the certification, like Alan Cementing Liquid. So I encourage everyone to take them. I've learned a lot of them, and actually it has given me a lot of great questions, so as to keep furthering this knowledge.
Great. That's important. That's a great tip from you for people who are looking into this, right? Because nowadays, I mean, lately, for the last few years, this idea of agile, methodologies and Scrum Master and with coming from Spotify, working culture and well, everything that came along afterwards. There's a whole movement of this, no? And there are a lot of people. I've seen lots of cases of people who have been in different careers. I mean, even listen to this, even psychologists, and have turned into the tech industry, like maybe data analysts or whatever, no? So what you were saying is good. So if you want to. So there are places where people can do this. And what would be, again, one example of those basic knowledge people should do before certifying for PO, product owner, or Scrum Master?
That's a great question. So let me think. A basic knowledge that you should have before, well, I would say anything communication related, because you don't work alone. So it's not that you just go and write technical documentation. It's actually all the opposite. You're supposed to talk to people to understand a pain, and then see how you can convey this to people who are actually going to work on that solution. If you want to be a PO or a VA, which is a business analyst, which is someone who mostly writes user stories, but writing a story per se is it's an art. Actually, agile is a very broad concept, because some people, you have Scrum, you have Kanban, you have extreme programming, and the way they tackle things are different in the approach. Mm-hmm. So depending on which vertical you want to go, you gotta learn different things. But communication is the base on which you do whatever.
Great, and I quite agree. I quite agree with that. So, well, there is this misconception then. I think some people have this misconception that if you want to be working with agile approach or Kanban, as you mentioned, or if you want to be a Scrum Master, you need to be in tech, that you need to be even a programmer, a developer. I mean, so there is this misconception, I suppose.
Not at all. I think that it's easier to find programmers who work as PO or Scrum Master because they were already related in this environment and the transition was easier. But for example, I had a lot of POs that were English translators. I'm an electronic engineer major, so it's not related whatsoever to what I'm doing. I had to learn from scratch. There are people who are chefs, as you said before, psychologists and whatever. It's all about the attitude. Like you see me, I'm a talker. Not everyone speaks as much as I do, but you gotta be comfortable with speaking with people. So if you can relate to other people, you're not shy about it, you're okay. I've also met many people who consider themselves introverts, and they also work as POs. So if you're not shy about using your English, your language, whatever, and you want to understand a problem and have patience to explain it to somebody else, and that's also key, you have a lot of patience, then you can work. You'll have to learn. Even if you are a programmer, you'll have to learn a lot because the task is different.
Definitely. And also willing to collaborate, right?
Yes.
That's a big thing.
That is very important. It depends where you work. Some people, myself included, I expected to work like in Google, Spotify, because I read many books about them. And I thought, oh, this is how agility looks like. And that is not always quite so. Many companies are doing what's called a digital transformation. So they're going through this process that can last like up to 5 years or more, depends on the company. So you will not work in the Spotify culture. You will work with people who do things in a certain way and trying to shift, but for that they need to trust you first, to guide you. So that's why you gotta be willing to collaborate, not only with the developers or the UX designers, or the Scrum Masters, but with the stakeholders who maybe are not familiarized with what you were saying. Moreover, they used to do things in a different way, and your approach clashes a lot with what they have in their mind. So before that change can take place, you have a lot of patience and cooperate a lot.
Yeah. And you mentioned something important, which is digital transformation. But I'm just saying this because this will be for another episode, because there's a lot to talk about that. Regarding digital transformation, different approaches, what does it mean really? So I think there's also some misconceptions, and the pandemic was like a big accelerator of digital transformation for many businesses. But again, that's for another episode. So maybe another occasion we can go through that. So on my next question is the following. I mean, you've been working with clients, teams, and projects abroad, right? So what have you found in terms of cultural differences, apart from the language, but cultural differences?
There are many, but the one that comes to mind right now is I work with people from Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Peru, United States, some people from Europe as well. And one key difference is the way they approach no when something is taxing. So some will give you a flat no, some will say yes, and we'll tackle this later when we have time, which sometimes means we'll never do it, but we don't want to say no because that's rude for us. Some people just say yes straight away, and they also never do it. And this is the way I think that cultures approach respect to authority. Like I'm not gonna name countries, but it's not well seen when you decline something that's requested out of you. And what happens afterwards is if you do not deliver, then you do not help to build trust. So it is something that you need to understand with each particular culture how that is managed. Because if you say no and you're being honest and truthful, that can also hurt the relationship. And then in the long run, it will not help you achieve your goal, which is to assist the stakeholder that you have and the team that you have. So it's not about saying yes or no, it's about understanding the culture that you are in and see how best to fit the way that you are supposed to collaborate with them. That's why, as you said before, and it is very important, you need to be willing to collaborate. And that means saying, okay, so I know this person seems to work like that. So how can I modify somewhat of what I know that this person can understand me, because communication only happens when people understand the message. If I start speaking in Chinese and you do not speak Chinese, then you don't understand me. And it's not because you are wrong or I'm wrong, but because I'm using a tool that is not optimal for a conversation. So that's what I mean by modifying what you can deliver according to the culture that you are in. Sometimes this can be very challenging. And in my work, I mean, it can take up to 3 months maybe to just understand how things work in each particular company, because you gotta know who runs what, and it's not straightforward many times. So if you are very curious and you're patient, this is a job that you could really enjoy because it has a lot of that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, what you were saying. And another point, what you mentioned, it's patience and time, right? I mean, because nowadays, maybe some people might feel frustrated if they don't feel comfortable, or if they don't see any progress in their jobs after 1 month, and even 2 or 3 months. And look at how important it is this that you're saying, that it might take up to 3-4 months even to get to know the culture, just the culture, not even understanding the business. Maybe you understand the business, maybe you're great in you have the best tech skills, maybe you have even good in English, but understanding the culture, the cultural differences. And that, I think, is a good tip for everyone willing to or wishing to find a job abroad, or for foreign companies, right? Or companies or projects that will require dealing with people from other countries and other cultures. So that's really, really important. Your insight is very good. So let's get on to the next question, which is a little bit related to what I was just saying. So based on your experience, again, working in English, what could you recommend to those seeking a professional career in English?
Well, I say this with a lot of pain in my heart. I know many people who say, hey, English, you can do whatever you want to, but I can't. And I listen to these people speak, and maybe they don't sound like a person from the States or from Great Britain. I mean, someone who was born there and speak the language perfectly, but they can actually communicate, like they have a lot of vocabulary. I think that is more important than like having the perfect intonation. I speak very fast, so I'm not a good example. Some people listen to me and they say, oh, you dominate this, I gotta be like you. I'm like, no, you do not need to be like me, because you're gonna be working with people who are not me, who feel just like you, who are not so sure about their English. And the important thing is just to understand each other, because sometimes I've not been able to understand some people from the States or from Great Britain or from Scotland or whatever, and they were natives. But I was able to understand a Chinese person speaking in English just fine, because maybe they would take more time to pronunciate things or whatever. So if you like English, just take the chance. Don't be shy about it. People are actually really nice. They want to understand you, and they're not going to be judgmental. Try to make it a part of your everyday life, like exercise about it. For example, I have my cell phone in English. I read a lot of book in English. I watch YouTube videos in English, and if I have to use subtitles because I miss something, I put them in English as well, just to keep practicing. I make it part of my everyday life.
Yeah.
I particularly love English. I've loved it since I was a kid. I started reading Harry Potter, and I read in English because I was asked to, but it just caught on. It is a part of my life, but I made a conscious decision, like my computer is all in English and whatnot. You can also put notes in your house, like with the names of things in English. I've learned other languages like that as well. So don't be shy, practice it as much as you can.
Great. That's a great tip. And it's on the same line that we always tell people students, from our consulting agency, Somos Lingua, and what I personally give to students, the tip I also give to students. Students always ask me, okay, what can I do to improve or to practice on my own? And I say, is it okay if I read a book? Is it okay if I listen to music? I say, everything is okay. Nothing will be a waste of time. If you read, if you put your phone in English, your email, settings, anything. So that's really interesting. But something you said, I would like to highlight also. What you said is like a conscious decision, really thinking, okay, I really want to do this. So I really take this commitment to practice, not only in a class or not only in an institute or with a teacher, or with your private teacher, but also go that extra mile, as people in the US say, no? Like, go that extra mile, that extra practice, read something, find information. And another important point that you mentioned, or the first point that you mentioned, is the vocabulary. You know, when we talked about the level of English, when we tell people, okay, and people ask us, what is the level of English? We always say the same, no? I mean, traditionally, people define the level of English according to the 4 basic skills, right? Which are listening, speaking, writing, and reading comprehension. And even though this is true, I always add a 5th component, which is vocabulary, and specific vocabulary and technical vocabulary. So if you're in any industry, and this is a tip for everyone, like you are working with tech projects or working as a product owner or Scrum Master, if anyone out there is looking for a job like this, I always recommend to dig in to learn specific vocabulary and find references as well. Nowadays, any company, from small, medium, and huge companies, have their content in social media or YouTube or even LinkedIn, promoting their culture, promoting their businesses. So I always recommend these to students. I mean, find references, follow those companies, follow those people who are always speaking in English about what you need to learn and what you, in terms of your career or your industry. Okay, so that what you said was really accurate, and we are on the same line in that. So thank you for that.
Allow me to add, please, allow me to add one more thing. So
Sure.
In order to get the job that I'm currently have, I had to give an interview. I had to present a topic. I had to do something that's called an app critique. So I had to talk about a digital product. I chose Mercado Pago, which is a digital wallet that we have in Argentina. And the thing is that it is an economical tool, let's say, a financial tool. And I knew nothing on financial vocabulary in English, even though in Spanish every single day. But it was a turning point for me because I am very proud of my English level, but I realized I knew nothing. So I had to start from scratch researching things. And there were things that in pop culture I never heard in TV shows, music, in videos. It was like, how could I never noticed that this was never expressed. So don't feel bad if you don't know a word and say, oh, I don't know English. Nobody knows everything, especially if you don't use it on a day-to-day basis. So you will have to keep on learning, even in Spanish. Sometimes when I read things, I don't know what they are. So once again, don't take this like a negative, but on the contrary, it's an opportunity to learn. And you will know many things based on what you have to do. If you don't do that, you will not know it, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's a great comment. That's a great comment. And that's why it's also useful, the references, and based on what you are, where you are, your industry, and your job. So yeah, that's a great tip. What would you like to do? What would you like to be doing professionally in the next, let's say, 5 years? And this is not a job interview question. This is even though it is typically, but I would really like to know. I mean, after all you've just mentioned about your experience and your clear proficient level of English, what would you like to be doing professionally in the next, let's say, 5 years?
Well, when you like what you do, I think that you always tend to say, so what's next? How can I improve? So I know these influencer, but not in the same, like, not in the way that she's in Telegram or Instagram or whatever, but rather this person who gives TED Talks, which I really find inspiring. Her name is Teresa Torres. I like that she's a woman in tech. I think that has a very positive impact in the world. But I like her view on how product should be led. Like, there are many ways of doing product. As I said before, if you're a cook, you could do sweet things, you do salty things, and many more things. I'm not a cook, so please forgive me if I'm missing key aspects. But in product, you could be doing at different parts of the life of a product, like from when you start with an idea, from when you launch it, when you keep it, when you are about to modify it for something else. So she stands at the beginning, and when it's already launched, like you have it in your hands, she says, so how can I learn continually to improve it? And she has this philosophy, which is continuous discovery, that I really love. I really like the idea because I think that's how products should be done. So that's how I see myself in the next 5 years, leading a team that really cares about what they're developing, and are always talking to customers to understand where the pain points are and how they can improve upon it.
Great. That's a great point. Great. So, well, I think a story is an example for everyone out there listening to us that it is possible to prepare yourself to follow a career path with English. So, once again, thank you, Sebastian, for being on the podcast. And well, we will meet everyone on the next episode of CrossFit Your English. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.